Ready to go here? I'd like to call this meeting on the Hooksett School Board to order for Wednesday, January 20th, 2012, 7 p.m. Mr. Benson, is it Mr. Benson or Mr. Harrison?
Tonight we have a student from, and I guess thinking about where he was, thinking about today. Julio joins us. His mom is here as well. Julio was a 5th grade student here at Hooksett Memorial, or at Hooksett Memorial until yesterday. He is now a 6th grader here at Colley. Julio is a warm, personable young man, a friend to everybody. Many of the Hooksett Memorial teachers wanted to share their comments about Julio, and here they are. Carol Okinen, who's our PE teacher and health teacher, and this one's a little wordy. Julio is well respected by the students in the whole school. He served as a peer leader representing Mr. Rivet's room. Every afternoon, he would be at his post at the end of the 3rd grade hall during dismissal, encouraging all students to exit the building safely and to do the right thing. Students really listened to him as he made connections with the students as they followed his instructions. He really made doing the right thing cool, and he was a great role model for all students in all 3 grades. Mrs. Roy, his 4th grade teacher, right? Julio is well known and well liked by his peers and his teachers. He can be a cut-up but also calm and has a gentle side. He's respected and shows respect all the time. He'll be an asset, or he has been an asset at Hooksett Memorial School. Terry Ucks, his 3rd grade teacher. They all wanted to rein in on this. Julio accepts all students and treats them with kindness and respect. In return, they treat him with respect as well. He is a true role model for many to learn from and follow. And Mr. Rivet, who's here tonight, kind of summed it all up. Julio just makes doing the right thing cool. Julio would like to share a couple of comments about himself. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a peer mediator at a school, and a peer mediator is somebody that does the right thing, and he's an upstander, make sure there's no bullying happening, and just...
Yeah, Julio really, he shines at Memorial. And Mr. Benson, I'm sorry to give him up to you, but you know, you've got a great young man here coming up to Colley. He's made a positive impression on everybody. We're going to miss him. He is going to make his mark here at Colley. And if you guys want to just stand up, and we'll have Julio lead us in the pledge. Flag's right there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome.
Julio, thank you for coming. You're a fine young man. Quite a lot of accolades from your teachers, and we're happy to have you. And I'm sure we're going to hear more from you in your years at Colley. Good luck in 6th grade, and come back and see us. A little token from the board. Thank you. Good luck. Proof of posting? Oh, I'll take that as a yes. No, that's okay. If I could, before we get into the agenda, just a couple of things. I want to say I attended the Colley Recognition Night on Monday, and I have to tell you it was an absolutely fantastic evening. I always enjoy Recognition Night, but I'll tell you, they seem to get better every year. And this was one of our bubble classes, as Mr. Benson indicated to me on Monday. Very big class, close to 200, I think, were recognized on Monday. It was, again, just an absolutely fantastic evening. A lot of smiles. In fact, my jaw was sore when I got home from smiling so much that evening. So Mike was there as well. I'm sure he enjoyed himself. But again, it's a tribute to Mr. Benson and his staff. Again, a great evening, and enjoyed it. One other item, we had it was a board meeting last evening at the head school. No business meeting, just a tour of the school by the school moms, as they call themselves, and a shortened version of what they do to educate the students of Hooksett on the history of the Hooksett schools. It was a great evening. I think right now they're doing first and third grade classes over there, and I wanted to bring it up this evening because they want the board to encourage more grades to participate. I think it's suitable for any age group. I had a great time. It was quite an event, and I don't usually get into the operations of the school, but I encourage the administration to look at having trips over there with their students. It's a great time. With that, get into the minutes. Looking for approval of the minutes of the Hooksett School Board Workshop on May 31st, 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes of the workshop on May 31st, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Looking for approval of the school board minutes of June 5th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes of the board meeting on June 5th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll abstain. I was out of town for that meeting. And looking for the approval of the non-public meeting minutes from the June 5th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the non-public minutes of the meeting of June 5th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Again, I'll abstain. Opportunity for the public to address the board.
Excuse me, David, we did have an amendment to the agenda to approve those verbatim minutes.
Oh, yes, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve the verbatim minutes from the June 5th school board meeting, portion dealing with Gordon Graham.
Discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the verbatim minutes of the June 5th meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I won't abstain as they're verbatim minutes, and I did read them. All right, thank you, Dave, for bringing that up. Again, opportunity for the public. All right. Reports. Reports of the administration. There was none this month. What's that? Last meeting. Okay. Reports of standing committees. Mike?
Well, I did attend the Good to Great Assessment Committee meeting in Cambria last week, and I don't know if they submitted some minutes or if I should, or it was my first meeting with them, but they seem to be doing a good job, and they're going to be combining or trying to combine with a couple of the other committees and getting some work done in a session is scheduled for during the summer, and get that done and start to do the work that they have to do.
And the Good to Great for the curriculum committee, that was postponed, I believe, till fall, but I'm not sure.
All right. I have nothing to report. Okay. Old business. Good to Great?
No, I think the only little bit of news I have is similar to what Mike is talking about. We're looking to have the curriculum, instruction, and assessment groups work together for a period of time so that there's more continuity in terms of what their focus is. So we're looking to do that. They'll each work on their own a bit, but for a little while, we want the three groups to begin to work together. And there'll be some work this summer, but most of the work will start off again in the fall.
Okay. Any questions, comments? All right. Develop plan to implement videotaping of school board meetings. Is that right?
Ready to roll.
All right. Role in developing the plan, or you have the plan?
After the last board meeting, I met with my staff. We have developed a plan which should be ready to go by August.
Great. So this is not a written plan that we need to review? Okay.
The review will be in whether people are able to access it.
So is that live for both audio
Live.
and video?
Yeah, we're working a little bit on the audio. There's some tweaking we have to do with that system, but I anticipate it all to be ready to roll. And it will be live as well. So not only will it be up there on Granicus, but we will also be able to access it as it's happening.
Questions, comments? All right. High school assignment policy. We have materials in our packet. We have proposed drafts from both Dave and Mike.
I'd like to make a motion, if I may. I'd like to make a motion. I mean, I wanted some public input. I'm not sure if we have any. We can discuss that, but I don't think it's going to be possible to have a forum before this. Because we want to get this done by the end of the year. Is what I wanted. But I'd like to make a motion to accept the JCB policy as the proposed draft of 6/1/12 that I submitted, and it was read, I think, in its entirety last time at the last meeting. I'd like to make a motion to accept that as our revised JCB policy.
Second?
Discussion?
Well, yeah, I think, again, I think that we need something so that we assure that we are following the contract with Manchester, and that's what I wanted to do with this policy. We have two other policies mandated by state law that allow for things to happen, for reassignment to happen if there's a problem somewhere, whether it's educational hardship or otherwise. Attorney Graham said in the verbatim notes that we have those other two policies for assignment of a student, and I quote, "for whatever reason it isn't working and the standard is not working." So in other words, those policies, JCA and JEC, are set up for if something's not working with the student, and so we change the assignment. I think we need a policy for specifically for our students that go to high school, and I think this allows for it to follow the contract with Manchester, and so yeah.
Okay.
Well, I support Mike's draft. I think he's actually improved it since I made a draft. And I agree that there will be, currently, there is 3 policies because we do have a JCB now. And I think this does follow the contract while allowing us to exercise all the rights within the contract. And it does provide a one-to-one, a one-at-a-time consideration. It does provide for a reason for that reassignment. And I think it's the policy that will best serve the students of Hooksett going forward. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Now, just for clarification, it's been a while since we talked. We do not need JCB, correct? We can just use JCA. The one that we're currently...
JCA and JEC are required by law.
And we're currently utilizing JCA.
Or JEC, or
JEC.
either one.
Or JCB. Because we still currently have a JCB policy.
We currently have it, but did we make a decision to go with JCA?
Well, the discussion was, and I think Phil could confirm that at this point, a student could file under any of our policies for consideration. So, because we never killed JCB, we just kind of moved our interest toward JCA and developed criteria. Currently, we have 3 policies.
Well, you just clarified the point I'm trying to make. You can, a student can file under either.
Yes. Three ways.
But my feeling is if we don't have a JCB or a new JCB in place, it's not covering, the other 2 policies cover situations that aren't working out. And I think we need something specifically. Those don't really cover a student who's assigned to high school, something that goes with the contract that we have with them. Those 2 apply for any grade, any student, anytime if there's a problem. And reassignment is necessary. This would be specifically for our students in Hooksett that are going on to high school, and it allows also for following the contract of Manchester, as it says in her first paragraph, and it's just something to add to the adherence of the contract with Manchester in my eyes.
I agree with Mike, and I think that as representatives of the public, it's our job to give as much latitude as we can under that contract to our high school students. We pay that money to Manchester. Manchester agreed to those terms in the contract, and nothing in Mike's proposal violates the contract. So I think it's incumbent upon us to have as much latitude as possible when people want to consider other high schools. And I think that is why that contract is written.
Can I ask why you don't think JCA offers the same?
I think JCA is for when there's a problem, when there's something that is not in the best interest of the student happening. As the beginning of JCA says, it's when there's it doesn't say the word problem, but when the assignment of the school is not in the best interest of the child, that's when we have that kicks in, and I think that policy is for that, for not in the best interest of the child. We're not talking that we're not saying Manchester is not in the best interest, but for specific cases to follow the contract, that's what we're saying. So I don't think JCA covers this because that's when there's something that's not in the best interest of the child. Whereas the other one, JEC, if there's ever an educational hardship, manifest educational hardship, that covers that. But I don't think either one covers this situation with our students, in my eyes.
I think it's necessary because JCA is solely the decision of the superintendent and cannot be overridden by this board. And I'm okay with that. But I think we do have to have another policy that can allow this board to take action if the public wants to make their case that for whatever reason they disagree with that decision under JCA. I think they should be able to have a hearing with us because we are the elected officials of the citizens. And I think that we should be able to have that latitude and represent them with the contract, within the contract, to allow them to go if that's what the vote of this board is. So I think there is reason to have both. Because on the other hand, if this board were in a mindset to allow nobody and be voting everybody out, the superintendent could step in and they could go to him and he could allow this and the board could not upset that decision. So I think it offers a balance for people and it allows them two options, really. There's also the other JCE, but for the most part, two options. Thank you.
I just think that, I've been on record as to what my concerns are. It's not in disagreement with the contract or not. My concerns are more philosophically whether, really we should be practicing school choice and with the research that I did. On the flip side of it, I think that we have a lot of important things to move forward with, and I don't necessarily want to tie that up. I'm actually more comfortable though with the JCA, the one that we had instructed, specifically because it didn't have the criteria with it. And those are my thoughts on it.
No problem. I'm still.
Well, I was just going to comment that it isn't really a choice between JCA or JCB. We can have both. We do have both as it is. And I think we had a really good discussion with Gordon Graham, and he did not refer to this as choice. He did say that he didn't recommend it, but he's been on record as not recommending it for a long time. He also said that there are many schools in the state that do the same thing. And the other issue that came up, and I had made the mistake of referring to lawsuit, would we face a lawsuit? And someone corrected me and said, no, if there was a problem, this would go to the Board of Ed to be decided. If Manchester wanted to raise an objection or something, there is a process in place for them to object and the Board of Ed to hear it and so forth. So I don't think that we're at a point where we're having to make a choice. I think we're adding an option. And I think particularly in the environment that we're in right now, being along in our contract, being some of the issues that are in Manchester, I think we need to be able to have as much flexibility as we can within the contract. Thank you.
One more comment too. I think we need this in addition to JCA because this just adds a little bit more flexibility of the superintendent still makes the recommendation, but we have a little bit more flexibility in that decision. And I think that this in JCA also allows, it's a little different with the payment. On JCA, it's the superintendents work out the tuition between the two schools is what that law says. They work out between the two superintendents. This follows what we would pay to Manchester anyways. And as Dave said, many schools use this who don't have a high school in their town. So I think we need this in addition to a JCA. I'm not saying get rid of JCA either. We need to have that by law, but I'm saying we need both.
If I can just add one thing to that, Mike, I talked to a school board member from Londonderry who has their own high school, and they send students to other schools if they feel that's in the best interest of the school, of the student. And he seemed to think, and I know it's one school board I'm talking about, but it wasn't a real big issue for them. If that was the best situation, that's what they did. So, thank you.
Have we had this reviewed at all either by, I know are we members of the School Board Association as far as the policy portion where we can have them look at it? They have a policy membership. Are we members with that?
They supply us with sample policies. I I don't know whether they review policies, I don't know.
From my understanding, if we're, if we are engaged with them on that end, like we pay for that support, I guess we can get that support. I'm just wondering if we should have it reviewed where, apparently, we went into writing this the first time and people really had issues with how it was written, and obviously there was a mistake made at one point. I just wonder if we really should have this more scrutinized over somebody who writes these professionally before we vote. And the reason why I'm not worried about the timing is because we do have something in place to continue so that we're not holding up kids for next year. And although I still feel the same way about the school choice issue, it becomes really how much is it a risk. That's more what I'm hearing about. And I know everyone practices. Does that make it necessarily right? No. Will eventually something will come up? Probably. Hopefully it's not our district. What's the risk there? It doesn't seem the risk is as high as maybe I thought it was in the beginning. But I still don't want to move rapidly forward without really making sure that we've got a really good policy in hand. I'd be more inclined to use the policies that have already been written by law and take the time to send this out to either Attorney Graham or, I don't know if he really writes policies, or to the School Board Association, who is experienced with writing policy, to maybe get a little more direction on it.
I can answer the question. I contacted them. They don't review policy. Like Phil said, they will give you sample policies and advice about how to create a policy, but he was very clear that they would not review and give an opinion on a policy that we had written. And I believe Mr. Graham said when he started speaking at the last meeting that he had read this policy because it was forwarded to him. He didn't raise any objections, as I'm sure he would have, being our attorney and us having an hour conversation about this subject. And frankly, the language that was objected to in the previous version of this policy was much more restrictive language. This is not that type of restrictive language. So I think between him looking at it and it being less restrictive, that I think we're okay to go ahead with this. Like I said, we had a lengthy discussion with him about this very subject.
Well, I have a couple of concerns. One is, it was my understanding when we first got into this issue a while ago, that the board had made a decision that they were making their decisions based on one of the policies. And then, I'll say it came to our attention that there was a choice. So, I honestly don't like, I'm all for choice. I want to go on record as saying I'm not for choice. But when you have policies, I think you need to have one policy for the issue at hand. I also have concerns the policy that has a motion on the floor that the superintendent makes the recommendation and then the school board is the final approval. With JCA, the superintendent makes the decision. With the current JCB, the board makes the decision. And I think it's one or the other. I don't like it to be one decision and then, here comes the board changing it. So I think it should either be the superintendent making the decisions, that, the board is going with JCA, or the student picks JCA, the superintendent makes a decision, and that's it. And again, or there's the current JCB that allows for the board. Those are my concerns.
Well, I appreciate that, Ben, but the reason I put that in there that way is because if I thought there'd be a better, I want the professional educator and Dr. Littlefield to be able to look at this case and give us his recommendation, as we do of many things, hiring people or anything else, we take his recommendation and then we vote on it. When he has staff nominations or anything else, we take his recommendation, we can vote on it, we can go against his recommendation. So I think this adds a little bit more flexibility for folks. Instead of us the board having to hear these cases and why they think it's in the best interest of the child. I think Dr. Littlefield is more capable of doing that, giving us his recommendation. And then we have the final recommendation, because we can then, if there is a extenuating circumstance or something, we can act on that recommendation. But I'd like him to make the recommendation, but I don't think he should be the sole. We already have a policy where he is the sole decision maker, and that's JCA.
I would comment too, Dana, we said we'd like to have one policy. Well, we can't. We have to have a minimum of 2. We have to have JCA, we have to have JCE. The other thing that I would like to point out, in looking at the contract here, it says, just to abbreviate, with the exception of those students who petition a sending district school board to attend a different school and are approved by such attendance on a case-by-case basis. I think that they are referring here to our board to make that decision. And I would offer that, again, going back to the balance issue, that, I'm not saying that Phil would not make good decisions, but we're making policy here for whoever eventually has Phil's job. If we had someone in that position who was adamant that no one was meeting the criteria, this board would be powerless to intercede in that. And we wouldn't be able to do anything about that. And I think that's where the balance comes. And likewise, if this board was adamant about approving no one, the superintendent could step in and hear that, and if it fit his criteria, he would be able to approve it. So for me, I think it serves the public better that they have the 2 avenues to look at, because both of the makeups change. This board will change, and at some point Phil will retire and we will hire somebody new, and we will have another superintendent. So we have to make policy for those eventualities, because sooner or later things will change. So that's why I think the balance works real well.
Any other comments? Okay, with that, we have a motion. All in favor of approving the...
Can I interrupt just for a minute, Dana? I was just wondering if Tricia, Mrs. Corpus, felt that this time she was going to have to abstain because she missed part of the conversation. Because personally, I would rather take some more time if she has more questions so that she'd be able to vote, because I think this is an important issue. Can I ask her that question?
I'm fine with that. We've got the motion on the floor is for Mike's proposed draft dated 6/1/12, which is the second page of the attachment. So the motion is to approve Mike's version of JCB.
I only have one question. Were there any other motions about accepting a different plan before that?
No.
I'm all set. Thank you, Dick.
Okay. With that, all in favor of approving the revision to policy JCB, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have a roll call, please?
Sure.
Tricia Cork is opposed.
Yay.
Nay.
Nay.
Madam Taker, just so that it's for the record, my opposal is just due to the fact that I'm more comfortable with using the JCA. I think it gives enough latitude for making decisions for the families coming up next year.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is network security.
Actually, could I make a motion? I would like to make a motion for the calendar year 2012, 2013. We continue to use JCA as our high school assignment policy.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I'd like to speak to my motion. The reason that I would like to make this, after talking to a variety of people about what is going on in Manchester, I think giving the superintendent the ability to make decisions in the best interest of the child is our best bet because of the situation in Manchester, and not really knowing, though they have a budget, what does that look like in each of the high schools in our town. And while we watch the high schools situation in Manchester, we can also be looking, if this board so chooses, a JCB or a different policy where we're not making a decision under the gun, but there are families that are making their decisions for their children entering school in September of 2013.
And Mrs. Corpus, perhaps you missed the part of the discussion, but we have to have JCA under the law. And I think Phil's laid out some pretty defined criteria. So really, as much as we may be concerned about the budget, I think Phil has to look at his criteria and put his blinders on and say, I'm going to approve based on my criteria or not. And I think he will do that. I have no doubt about that. But we don't have to pick one policy over the other. That was part of the discussion, that we currently have 3 policies that any citizen can file for reassignment under. What our motion was not to choose one, but was to revise policy JCB, which is a current policy of the school board. I just wanted to clear that up. Thank you.
When I said the budget constraints, I wasn't referring to Hooksett, I was referring to Manchester's.
Well, I think
Manchester will be severely understaffed, under-equipped, under everything, and it may not be in the best interest of the Hooksett student to go there.
if I may, that JCA would remain in place whether we had approved JCB or not, because we have to have it under the state law. And like I said, I think Bill's laid out a good criteria. If the budget causes something to happen with that affects that criteria, he is already set to make that decision. So it's not like we're giving up one by taking the other, and I don't think that the motion is actually valid because we are required by state law to have policy JCA. We could revise it, I believe, but I don't think we could ever get rid of it anyway. We'd be in violation of the state law.
You know, I don't disagree with you, Dave, that obviously we need JCA. Why I was intrigued by the motion is the board did support JCB, and I'm thinking, and I don't even know if this is a possibility, but if somebody were to submit a request to go to the school of choice and maybe did not know which policy they should I'll say file under, they may ask, does the board support one or the other? And I don't know. I'm speculating, but I don't think it's out of line for the board to be on record as supporting one, where there's more than one, supporting one over the other.
I don't think legally we can vote to have JCA. We already have JCA. I don't see how we can do that. That's already there, set for certain criteria in the state law that says if there's an assignment to a school that is not in the best interest of the child, the superintendent has that power to change that assignment. That's not what we're dealing with here, really. I mean, I don't think that has anything to do with our policy for our high school students, because our policy for high school students, it's not for someone that is assigned to a school that is not in the best interest. It's made for a different situation in JCA. So I don't think you can vote to have it JCA or not. It's there.
I was recommending that we say we're going to continue to use JCA for the next calendar year to either send JCB to the policy committee, which is typically the avenue in which policies are created within the Hooksett School District. And that can go to that committee can look at it can go to the lawyer, and we're not under the gun rushing. So people whose children enter high school in September of 2013 know now what they need to do. And Another reason that I was saying we should use that is in the best interest of the child means if the child intends to go to college and they want to take a foreign language in a school district that has no foreign language department, it's in the best interest of the child to go to a school that offers foreign languages. We're not going to go in 6 years and say, did y'all go to college? All they have to say is, I want to go to college, and they don't offer the foreign language that I have. I think that if we play with JCB, we're going to make, we as a school board have had enough heat about high school assignment policy, and when our high school of record town is in such financial turmoil on how they fund education, Hooksett getting picky about where we send our kids to high school right now is not a frugal use of our time when we're a district in need of corrective action because we're a district in need. We need to be focusing on educating our students, not where are they going to go to high school. If it's in the best interest of the child, most people are going to give a solid case for in the best interest of the child.
Well, this board can't vote to say which policy we are going to use because those policies are available to the students and their parents. I would agree more with Dana. We could, if we wanted to make an opinion about which one we thought was best, but we cannot restrict right now. If somebody wants to file under JCB and come to this board and prove hardship, in my understanding and talking to Gordon, they have the right to do that. The only way that we could narrow it would be to invalidate JCB, leaving us two policies that are both required by the state. So the narrowest we could get it was JCE, JCA. And I think, even then we couldn't say we're only going to hear under JCA because that's why the state made the law, so that we could do either one. The other thing is, if JCB has, first of all, I don't want to make a decision depending on how much heat the school boards have. We need to deliberate this until we come up with what's best. JCB has been talked about now for going on 8 months. I think we had an hour conversation with a lawyer. It's a one-page policy. I totally, agree if people want to vote against the policy, that's their right. But to say that at this point we're not sure about it or we don't really know what it means, I think is a problem with us as a school board, because by this point we should know what it means. We should be looking into this, and if we have questions, that's why I wanted Gordon to come in, is to answer all of those questions so that when we moved ahead, whichever way we voted, we wouldn't be left wondering. But that's what I'm still hearing, that we haven't really looked at it enough. Thank you.
Sorry, just one more comment. I don't think it's about us being picky about where we send our students to high school. I think it's about what's best for the students and the citizens of Hooksett. I think we need the policy because it's best for the students and the citizens of Hooksett, not what's best for Manchester or anywhere else. And the lawyer has looked at this a number of times. And a couple of meetings that I've had with him, and I think, again, I don't think you can have an affirmative for this motion to say there's a JCA because we have the JCA. I think we have to move forward with a different JCB if the one that I wrote isn't accepted. But that's all. I think it's about what's best for the students of Hooksett. That's all.
I can say I'm interpreting it as an endorsement. That motion. I realize we couldn't vote to not have JCA, and so we're not voting to have it because we have to have it. I look at it as an endorsement.
Okay, can you read the motion back, please? What the motion is?
Motion moved that for the calendar year 2012-2013, we continue to use JCA as the high school assignment policy.
I think it's an unnecessary motion because we will, regardless if this is an up or down vote, the same thing will occur. I would also, I think, go back to procedures and rules, because if we're going to vote on this, shouldn't we put this on the agenda and discuss? If we're going to now endorse the policy, I think that's a little different than where we were at. And I don't really even mean to get there, because the yes or no, it's still the same result. And I don't want to try to encourage parents and tell them that in a blanket statement, we think that everybody that's going to apply has a best interest case instead of a manifest hardship or a hardship, because we don't know until the student applies. I think we should make them all aware of whatever their choices are, but we don't know that until, or at least until they talk to Phil and he understands what their concerns are. We don't know that.
Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the motion as read, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Roll call, please.
Mike?
Nay.
Dave?
Nay.
Yes.
Sarah? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Next item, network security.
I think that's fine. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Woodrow concerning the network security of our guest network. My first question is, was authentication to the guest network considered before the implementation of the BYOD pilot program?
It was my understanding from the procedures of the Hooksett School Board that if we have a school board member has a direct question for an administrator or staff member, that the question needs to be directed to the superintendent, and the superintendent will determine the answer to the question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, as we discussed about a month ago, when I proposed reconfiguring the meeting, we were told that the staff is here to collaborate with us so that we could get information directly from the people that know. I have no problem if we want to put that question to the superintendent, but I just thought it would make more sense for me to ask the person that likely knows the answer to that question. And particularly, I want to know if the technology director did consider it. That's why I did ask him. Thank you.
Well, I will say in the past, we have had this collaboration. But at this point, we'll pass that question to the superintendent. And how would you like to respond to that?
I think that's a question.
Okay.
Can you restate the question?
Yes, I'd like to know that if the technology director considered authentication to the guest network before implementing the BYOD pilot program.
So, pre-BYOD, we consulted, talked with many districts that were doing bring your own device. And given the infrastructure that we have and what was happening in those districts that were doing bring your own device, we sort of tailored the network here to accommodate what we felt was in the best interest of the, of the students for the pilot. And then during the pilot program, we were very proactive about looking at how is that working, what are some changes that we can make. That's why we did a pilot. And then obviously, post-pilot, you take a look at what worked, what didn't work, and given the recent firmware upgrade that we can now apply to our wireless controller, it gives us a lot more flexibility and allows us to streamline processes a lot more. And so we'll be, obviously considering whether or not those would be things to implement should the pilot continue.
I appreciate that, Matt, but I
Thank
guess
you.
what I'm asking is, in the planning of the BYOD pilot program, did you consider whether or not you were going to use authentication on the network?
Many different things were considered,
But again, I'm asking you.
and I answered your question.
Yeah,
I appreciate
he
that.
answered the question.
Okay, Dana, then did he consider authentication?
I believe he did.
Is that correct?
I believe I answered your question.
Well, no, I would just like to get an answer to my question.
And you did.
Did you consider authentication on the guest network before you implemented the program? I think it's a pretty simple question.
And again, I think the question was answered. That was what, when you asked me, I think the question was
Okay,
answered.
can we have the statement read back then?
I don't know.
Well, then, Matt, why don't you just save us a lot of time and just answer the question?
Well,
Did you consider
again,
Because I
authentication?
did answer the
Well,
question.
yeah, he did answer the question. And again, it appears you're not happy with the answer, but
Well, Dana, it's not that I'm not happy with the answer. He said he considered many things. He did not say he considered authentication or that he did not consider authentication. And I'm not trying to be picky here. I'm just trying to get an answer to my question. Did you hear him say that he considered authentication?
well, and I don't claim to understand everything that the tech director explained, to be honest with you, but he gave you an answer to your question.
I disagree. Now, if would you like me to submit the videotape of what he said at the next meeting? And would you agree that if he hasn't answered the question, we're going to get the question answered at the next meeting? Would you agree to that? Because we have it recorded right here.
Again, I'm hearing, and I heard a response to your question.
Did you hear an accurate response to the question that I asked?
I'm not qualified to make a decision if that was an accurate response. What I'm telling you is he responded to your question.
He said that we considered many things.
That was the second response. He had a very detailed response to the
Which
question.
none of
initially.
those details had anything to do with my question. That's not my opinion, Dana, that's the facts.
Well, again, he stated that he answered the question.
So we're going to accept that as a board.
I'm going to
All right,
accept it.
but if I submit the videotape that he has not answered that question as the chairman, will you allow this question to be heard at the next meeting and get an answer? I think that's fair. If you're saying that you heard that answer and I'm saying I didn't, and we don't have a verbatim read back, how are we supposed to
Well,
say
again,
that?
I heard a response to your question.
I could ask you any question right now, Dana, and you could respond to me. It wouldn't mean
Exactly.
you were responding to my question.
Well, yes, it would.
If I ask you if the sky is blue and you tell me the door, that has nothing to do with my question. He did not answer my question, Dan.
Well, again, I believe he did.
Will you allow me to submit the video?
You can submit the video.
And will you
absolutely.
allow me to have that question answered if it hasn't been answered?
You can submit the video and ask me any question you like.
No, but I'd like to ask Mr. Woodrow the question. I don't
Well,
expect you
yeah.
to know it.
Well, you asked me if I would answer the question.
No, I'm asking you as the chair, if I can show you that he did not answer the question through the video, then will you allow me to ask that question again and get an answer?
I'm going to tell you that you can ask the question, and there's a response that's coming.
So I can ask the question again.
You've asked it.
And if I show you it was
Several
not
times now.
answered, if I show you that it was not answered, are you going to allow me to ask it again? That's a decision for the chair.
I'm going to say if you ask the same question and you get the same answer, where are we at?
I hope not to get the same answer. I hope to get a yes or no answer.
I would think you would get
It's
the
a
same
simple
answer.
question.
I would think you would get the same answer.
It's a simple question, Dan. I'll go
I-
on and
I
ask my
agree.
next question then,
I
and let's
agree.
see if I can get an answer to a different question then. My second question, let me just find my place here. Oh, Mr. Woodrow, it was clear that we had the ability to have authentication via the wireless controller before we started BYOD. And we had many lengthy conversations about different methods of authentication. Why was it that you never brought up in the discussion the whole possibility of using the wireless controller for authentication?
When we set up the wireless for the Bring Your Own Device pilot, as I had mentioned before, we had many considerations before we went into the pilot. Given the infrastructure in which we have, we were limited to what we were able to do. And I think you're still confused about encryption, authentication, and some of those terms. And so, in a nice way, I'm trying to explain to you that we considered many options. And given the layout, which I think this may be the 5th or 6th time I've said this, but I'll say it again. given the infrastructure that Hooksett has, without going into too much detail, because I feel we begin to get into some of these things that could compromise the integrity of our network. So what I'm going to say is, given the structure of the Hooksett network, we structured this in such a way that we felt would work best for the pilot program. As we went through the program, we would continue to revisit some of those things. Encryption, authentication, all of those things come into play with the wireless network. And so obviously, after the pilot, we'll go back and we'll look at different things, what worked, what didn't work. That's why you do a pilot. And we'll make changes based on that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Woodrow.
You're welcome.
Again, you didn't answer my question because my question was, in the discussions that we had, we talked about many forms of authentication that are not supported on our network currently. We were having an open discussion. We talked about MAC addresses and the fact that we would have to buy equipment to have MAC addresses. My question is, as we brought up MAC addresses, logins, and all of this other stuff, it was never brought up about doing authentication with a wireless controller, perhaps by adding VLANs, or you bringing up some possible solution, although you did bring up solutions about buying MAC addressing appliances that would be put at each school, and you were very nice to spell out a scenario of how that would happen, but we never discussed the capability that we already had with equipment that we've already purchased. And I'm just wondering why that was never brought up as a possibility.
My answer would be the same.
All right. Question asked, question answered.
I'd like to go on the record that my question was not answered. This is the second question that was not answered. I only have one more question, if you would allow me. Matt, do you currently support having authentication on the network, on the guest network?
Given the ability that we now have with the firmware that was released, it hooks it up to many different options on the wireless network without having to do a lot of changes to the infrastructure, which could be costly. One of those being streamlining the collection of MAC addresses, being able to see clients on the network, to see what kind of device they have, group those devices, take action on those devices. For example, you can isolate people onto a subnet so that they don't have access to the internal network, or completely remove access for that person. These things weren't available before that. So now that we have that ability, obviously those things will be considered in making changes.
Well, I would like to just go on the record and say that my research has shown that we had the capability with the devices that were purchased by the school district prior to BYOD to do most of what Mr. Woodrow just explained. And the firmware upgrade allows more manipulation of the data and more tracking. But the authentication piece, which is what I asked about, was there from the very beginning. Thank you.
Tricia?
And those changes that Matt is mentioning that will be looked at go through the technology committee? Like the technology committee, I'm trying to understand. The technology committee is working on the plan, like the technology plan for the next 3 years. And the administration will decide what is the best use of the current firmware with authentication and encryption.
Well, I'd like to add to that this is a security policy question that we're talking about, and I think it clearly lands here at the board to decide what policy we would like to set for security to the internet via this school's hardware and software. So I think this board should come up with some policy as to whether we are going to allow a wide open internet access here, or whether we feel that there are certain restrictions that should be instituted. I would like to do that with the support of the technical director, and I think we should, but currently it is wide open and no one is authenticating to the guest network, and we are offering access to the internet to anyone who comes into the school. Thank you.
Okay, next item, policies, second reading. Board was asked to bring you packets from May 1st.
fellow board member is helping me by finding
All right,
this.
that's
I
fine.
currently don't know what box that's in.
It's all right, that's all right, I know, yeah, I understand the situation. Would you like to use mine?
Could I?
Yes.
For the members of the public that don't know, I'm in the middle of a move and I don't know where my school board box is at the moment. We're on our second reading of the following policies. GCO, which is Teacher Performance and Evaluation. We are now required by state law, NHDOA Code of Administration rules, to change this. Do we want to do these individually or all as a group? It's been done different ways at different times.
We have done them both ways. We've done it as a package approval, or we've done them.
And it makes sense when we do it as one group unless someone has a specific problem with one of them, we can take that one out and vote on the rest.
Yep.
I second. That's a
Is
motion.
that a motion?
Yeah, yes. It needs one.
All right, well, let's do it right. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, let's do it as a package.
Do you want me to, just for clarification, do you want me to read what the proposed code is and why we're changing it, or just someone make a motion that we approve all of the readings? I'm fine either way.
I make a motion that we approve the entire package. Myself, I've had time to review them all, and I'm okay to vote.
Second.
Discussion. Okay, all in favor of approving the current policy packet for good GCO, IGE, DFA, JICL, JICL-R, JICL-A, GBEF, GBEF-R, and CHAA.
I'll second that.
So, well, actually, yeah, that was,
You listed them?
yes. So we've got, all in favor of approving that packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, new business. Response to public input. Anyone got any response to public input?
I don't believe that we have to respond to.
Tricia?
There were two questions at the last board meeting, but they're in the same box, but I can't find right now, so I can forward them to you
Okay, so we'll,
in the next few days. Yes.
get those for the next meeting. Okay, next item, public forum, bring your own device program. I know we had scheduled a forum for the 14th of June. Wasn't that?
I think that was a mistake because the Wizard had come out with that as the best date. I think Kathy sent an email saying that we had never really said that. That was just a result of the Wizard saying.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
it did, she quickly came out with a response saying
That was canceled. That's the way I read it, that it was canceled, so.
There was a new wizard out though, right?
That's what someone
That's, yeah, no.
Again, I was not at that June 5th meeting, so I was depending on the wizard.
Well, yeah, I could recap that at the June 5th meeting, we tabled it to try to pick a date today, but I think the Wizard was still out there from before June 5th, and finally the results came out and automatically got emailed to us. That was my take on what happened. I was shocked when I saw it because we had all here agreed that there wasn't anything scheduled as of June 5th when we were doing it. So I think it was just the Wizard was still working its Wizard ways.
And I'd like to clarify for everyone, the reason that there was a conflict that I couldn't say at the meeting, I knew what that conflict was it was actually Mr. Miner's retirement party, and his wife, who was planning it, listens to our meetings, and I was afraid that he would find out that his surprise party was on June 14th, while his wife was watching a meeting, and they had kept it quiet for over 6 months, so I didn't want to pull the surprise if the timing right.
Okay. Well, you know, while we're talking about BYOD, I'd like to make a motion that we approve BYOD for implementation for grades 2 through 8, beginning on October 1st of 2012, giving the administration time to have informational meetings with parents during that September timeframe after school starts. So that's my motion.
If I may, Dana,
Second the motion.
we had voted as a board that we would not take a vote until they had that public forum. Are you aware of that?
I actually reviewed the motion, and if I could, it's in that May 31st packet, and it says, G. Pearl motion that the board commit to scheduling a public forum prior to any action taken by the board regarding BYOD. And I believe we've committed to having a public forum.
Dana, it was clearly my intention, and I think that is reflected in that motion, that we wouldn't take any action until after a public forum had been concluded.
Well, again,
And we have not picked a date for a public forum even. And what would be the purpose of having a public forum about our decision making if we have already made the decision?
well, the fact that I supported, by the way, a public forum.
That's why I'm surprised that you're making this motion.
And I'm always open to hearing from the public. And you know, the fact that we implement any program doesn't mean that things can't be refined and changed as we move along. You know, we've seen surveys on this program. We've seen video here of students talking about the program. I'll tell you, I've heard no negatives on the program. We've heard some minor issues, a lost device, and that were found, lost devices that were found. And again, I've heard nothing. Still very open to a forum.
But Dana, you may not have heard anything because we haven't had a forum. I'm just totally blown away here because you were on board that we would have a forum before we took any action, and your motion is in total contradiction to what you voted for.
Well, I disagree.
You don't think that voting to implement BYOD tonight is an action?
Absolutely, it's an action.
And we agreed to have a forum before we took an action.
I'll read it again. G. Pearl motion that the board commit to scheduling a public forum prior to any action taken by the board regarding BOD. We had a motion to pass that we were going to have a public forum. The board committed to having a public forum.
Well, I would like to check that, because as we've seen here tonight, we do not have verbatim minutes, we do not have verbatim readout, and I think, Dana, it is clear that that motion, the intention of that motion was to have a public forum. That is why at the 5th meeting, we spent time here trying to come up with a date. We talked about that a forum during the summer wouldn't be a good thing. That was the discussion that this board had, and I'm really surprised at this point, you know, that you are now making a motion to go against the action of this board. And I think it's clear, and I think you're playing semantics if you want to try to twist my motion into that, because I can now tell you clearly what my intention was to conduct a forum before the action. And I will give you my word on that. I'm not making that up. And that's clearly my honest intention. If you decide to go against that, you will do that knowing what my intention was with the motion, and I believe the way the motion was really made.
Well, I can tell you that I supported the motion based on the motion and based on the fact that I'm all for a public forum. And we have public forums on a number of different items. and when we bring that information back, we may hear something that refines the program. We'll talk about it and decide if we're going to refine it. We take public input, and we make adjustments based on that input. Remember, I supported that motion, and I'm telling you why I supported it. I supported a public forum. But I also believe we've got to move forward. This program was designed as a pilot program for the 11-12 year, and then we were going to make a decision and move on. And I committed to that. I committed to that before you were on the board.
We have a second.
Yes, we do. For this discussion.
I'm probably very much in favor of the BYOD program. I'd probably have to vote no tonight if we're going to make that decision before public forum. So just to let you know what I'm thinking. I'd probably be very much for it, but I can't vote yes in this situation.
Anyone else?
I'm also in favor of the BYOD program, and I do believe also, just because if we go for it now and we then have a public forum and something comes up, that we can refine and make changes, like you said.
You know, I've tried to work with this board, and I've tried to really come together as a group here. And Dana, I really cannot believe what you're saying tonight. There are issues out here that are being discussed in the public now about security. BYOD is a emerging thing. There is not a lot of history. We need to find out about it. It has security issues. I've talked to police officers that have issues about this. We need to have a public forum before we make a decision. What is the problem if you're saying we're going to have the public forum and then we're going to reverse it? We need the confidence of these people. This board has made this mistake before. We got it right with the public forum for high school. We had a forum, people came, and that was considered. I thought we were moving down that road now. And this, to me, after sitting here the other night and deliberating and going through a meeting wizard and trying to figure out when we could have this forum, this is totally a hijack. And if you think that this is working with the will of what was said here, you're sorely mistaken, Nate. So you can vote however you like, but I'd just like you to know that was not my intention. I don't think it's the expectation of the people that we serve, and I don't think it serves best. You say you haven't heard about any problems because we haven't had a forum. There have been problems. We have not received any report of any educational benefit to this. We need to consider the educational benefit to adding anything to our school. We haven't had questions answered tonight about security. So there's a host of issues here, and if we could have a forum, and whichever way this went, then it would be the will of this board and the people. But what we're doing tonight is taking this board back a step. And if that's what you want to do, and you have the votes, then you can go ahead and do it. Thank you.
Well, I disagree with most of what you said, and I'll tell you, you're talking about issues. I believe the questions you asked were answered. I heard the answers, and I'll tell you, I have known Matt now for, well, I won't say how long it's been because I don't know, but I tell you, I support Matt. I think he's done a wonderful job with the technology program for the Hooksett School District. He's had seems like hundreds of questions sent his way on BYOD. I believe he's answered them all. He may not have answered them to the satisfaction of those asking, but he's answered everyone. I've heard nothing that tells me that there are any issues. There's been questions about security. There have been answers about security. And you know what? We committed to making a decision on this program when we implemented it. We implemented the pilot program. We were going to do it for the 11-12 school year, and then we were going to make a decision. Again, I am all for a forum. I can tell you, I don't like the comparison to a hijacking. I take exception to it. Because if you go back and look at the record, before you were a board member, I'm doing exactly what we committed to.
May I?
Yes.
This isn't about Matt Woodrow. And it's not about whether we think that Matt Woodrow's abilities as a tech director are good. We're an oversight board for the school district. We're supposed to ask questions. We're supposed to consider questions. We're supposed to consider the public. These are all things that should come into this decision. And to sit here and to say that because you've known Matt for so many years or something, that has really nothing to do with it. This is a choice that we're trying to make for this district. This is not whether Matt's right or Matt's wrong. This is whether we want BYOD or whether we don't. And more than that, it's whether they want BYOD or they don't, because it's their kids. And we're only here to oversee that. So whenever we can go on the side of the public to hear them and to hear what their concerns are. There may be concerns that you haven't heard that would be very important for you to hear at this point. One thing I can say throughout this BYOD pilot, that the discussion among the public has evolved and many different things have come up about security and different ways of doing things that weren't apparent at the beginning. So now to say that because you committed at some other point to make a decision tonight, even though we were in agreement that we would have a forum first, and I will stick with that first, because I think that was clear in the intention. Yes, I would say it's hijacking, Dana, and I would say we're not serving the best interest of the people that voted for us, whether you vote for it at this point, or whether you vote against it. Because we're not going to hear them before we vote. We're not going to have a forum. We're not going to have anybody come up and talk about anything. You're going to vote now. Tricia?
Having been on the board when Bring Your Own Device program was instituted, the premise of it was children were already bringing some devices in a cell phone that they kept in their bag, so when they got home they could tell their parents where they were. And Bring Your Own Device puts the decision on whether the device comes to school or not in the hands of the parents, not the administration saying you can't have a cell phone if your child. If you can't have a cell phone because the school says you can't have a cell phone, and a parent who's concerned about their child who has to walk a distance home from school, isn't sure what time their after-school activity gets over, it gives them a little leeway. You know, when they get off the bus, they can call their mother and say, I'm off the bus, and they're not in danger of being in trouble when they're in the building that the phone is in the bottom of their backpack. It puts the decision whether you bring a device, just because we have a BYOD program doesn't mean every kid has to bring their own device. It's up to their parents to parent them. That's not the job of the Hooksett School District to parent children. It's to educate children. And if you have a concern as a parent about your child's ability to handle an iPod at school or an iPad or a laptop, then make the decision not to bring it. I know numerous children who are above average readers that are not reading in school because of negative peer pressure, that they want to read a 1,000-page book and everybody's like, what you reading that for? So the use of a Kindle or a Kindle Fire eliminates that pressure and lets the kid find their own way and read the books they want to read instead of answering questions. So a parent can still say no to their child. You can't bring the device.
If I could, you know, you brought up a good point, Dave, and Matt, I apologize. I should not have named you. I have complete confidence in the technology program here. Matt Woodrow is the leader of that program, and as the leader, you know, I named him and I shouldn't. You're right, it's not about him. It's about the technology program for the Hooksett School District. I think it's moved in a very positive direction over the past few years, and I've been very pleased with it. Do I have confidence in it? Absolutely. Do I have any reason to believe there's a problem with it? No. Will I listen? Will I listen to the public and make decisions based on public input? Absolutely.
Well, I have confidence in the teachers, and 18 of 19 teachers supported the program. One was ambivalent, but again, what's the rush if I'd probably in support of the program, but if it's not gonna start till October, you said, or meetings in September, we have to, what's the rush of doing this right now instead of waiting until it gets some more public input?
First of all, none of the things that Mrs. Porkus said rely on BYOD as far as the child after school with the backpack and the cell phone, because the Hooksett School District has always tolerated kids having cell phones in their backpack if they don't take them out. So as far as being picked up and meeting and so forth. I would also say that we do provide readers as far as iPads, and we will probably be going in that direction. And I am not talking about the Hooksett School District technology policy. That's not on the table. It is BYOD that we're talking about. Some of the issues that I was hoping we would have a chance to talk about with the public were those of liability. There's been a video made of the Pauley cafeteria showing all the kids, and the video ends with machine gun fire that's been laid over the video of all the kids. Now, the liability of this stuff getting out of the school and getting up on the web is not within the control of this district. You cannot expect someone to go into the Pauley CAF and know that those things are not happening if it's perfectly acceptable to have devices out and using them. And these are some of the issues that I think we need to talk about, because those liabilities are spread between the school, the parent, and in today's environment of bullying and school violence and so forth, some of the things that we would have done when we were kids are now chargeable offenses. And we need to look at these things and decide. I also think if we're going to approve a policy for BYOD, we should make a policy. We should not just say it's going to be allowed. Are we in favor of kids using devices in the lunchroom to play games? Personally, I'm not. I would not support that, but we haven't even looked at a policy to determine what types of things we're okay with and what types we're not. So this is being rushed at this point for something that was being, I thought, was going to be brought in front of the public. And, you know, to end my statement, it doesn't really matter if we're talking about BYOD data or the technology. What we're talking about here is a commitment to serve the public. I think it's pretty clear from the people that were here, we made a commitment to have a public forum with them. Yay or nay, however this thing went. And if I was sitting out there, I would be pretty disappointed about the people sitting right up here. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, all in favor of approving the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Have a
Opposed?
roll call vote, please.
Joe?
Aye.
Aye.
Tricia Porkus, aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Next item. Behavior at the meetings.
Yeah, that one's mine, Dana. Did you get a chance to watch the video that I sent you of the June 5th meeting?
I did not.
I was really hoping as a chair that you would watch that so that you would know what we're talking about. It wasn't that long.
I did not.
Yeah, okay, well, that's unfortunate. There's a number of things that have been going on at these meetings that I think are really shedding a bad light on the school board, and I think that we should discuss them. One of the things that I think is really offensive is when people are having side conversations with each other while other people are speaking and have the floor. This is going on quite a bit. And to me, it shows a lack of respect for the person that's talking, whether you agree with them or whether you don't. And I really hope that we could all make a commitment to stop that. I'm not one that's really in favor of having some strict rules and try to bring somebody up on breaking rules, but I think we owe it to the public to try to respect each other and to do the best job we can. The other one is participants who are paying attention to their devices and not to the people that are talking, as is happening right now. We noticed when the young gentleman was in here to do the pledge, I looked over, and you can see on the video, everybody in this room was looking at him, as we should be, because that's an important part of our meeting. As we get away from that part of the meeting, people that are sitting at this table migrate into their laptops, and they start to do whatever they're doing. And to me, it's disrespectful. Because if we're gonna sit at this table, we should participate in this meeting and listen to whoever's talking. So I hope that we could try to present a better image to the public by paying attention to those people that are speaking and not paying attention to our devices. And by the way, that's one of the reasons that I am, at this point, not in favor of BYOD. I want my kids to have human interaction with the qualified teachers we have and not staring at screens when they should be engaged with their teachers and with their other students. I also am against having people ask me to sign documents when other people are talking. During the public input, I was asked to sign the manifest and stuff, and I'm trying to focus on the person that's there as well as liking to know what I'm signing. So I think it would be a better practice if we have documents that need to be signed, that we wait till the end of the meeting. It only takes a couple of minutes. And that gives a respect to the people that are talking, particularly the public, that we really do care about what they say. The other one, and this is why I wish you had seen the video, was fair enforcement of the rules by the chair. And I'm not directing this at you, Dana, but at the last meeting, the acting chair was not enforcing the rules fairly. I leave it to the chair to enforce the rules in the manner that they decide, but I think it should be fair to everyone that's in the meeting and not make statements that the rules are going to be slanted to someone that's in that debate at that time. And not interrupting others. This was rather rampant at the last meeting, and I have apologized for my part in that, and I would point pointed right at me as being one of those people that did it. I was not the only one that did it. I think we need to sit back, let people finish their statements, and go on from there. So those are my concerns. I don't have a motion, but I just wanted to bring those up after sitting through the July 5th meeting. Thank you.
I just want to clarify one item, as I understand it, Trish, if you don't mind. I normally let everyone else speak first, but this is a Hooks School Board meeting, and you know, I'm not trying to wordsmith here, but it's a meeting of the board where the board discusses agenda items, and the fact that we are able to have various members of the administration present to ask them questions and rely on their expertise when we need it is a bonus for us. But I want everyone to keep in mind, these people have been at their jobs on a normal school day from, I'll say 7 o'clock, but I know some of them are in earlier. And then here we are at a meeting that normally starts at 6:30 and runs to anywhere from 9 to 11. And they've got to prepare for their next day. And the fact that they're doing work, you know what? I have no problem with it. I'd rather have them at home with their families and interacting with their families, and then able to do whatever they need to prepare for the next day. And you know what? If it's disrespectful for a teacher to at 8:30 at night, I say teacher, an administrator, at 8:30 at night to be that involved in their work that they're planning for the next day, and then we're worried about offending somebody, then you know what? Too bad, because the public is here talking to us. They're not talking to the administration. So the public input is for the board. This is a board meeting. I love having them here, but I also appreciate the fact that they've put in over a 12-hour day right now. So that's my opinion. Actually, Tricia is next.
I just wanted to clarify why I interrupted a member of the public when they were speaking. According to policy BEDH, which is in our board packet tonight, under number 4, it says, speakers may offer comments on such school operations and programs as concern them. In public session, however, the board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel, nor complaints against any person connected with the school system. Other channels are provided for the board consideration and disposition of complaints involving individuals, which should be referred to the superintendent for appropriate action. members of the public got up and directly were speaking to Matt Woodrow, which this policy does not allow. They were also correcting all of them on the use of their devices, and I am pretty sure that most of them are using their devices, and this packet is available. They have this packet on their device, where we have a paper copy, they have an electronic copy. So they are actually following along on this device. And I will speak to why my device is on my desk to the public. My device is on in front of me and being used as I am a single parent of two 10-year-olds who are with a babysitter tonight, so that I can stay on the school board, because when I was elected to the school board, I was married. I am no longer married. I am a single parent who is dependent on my friends to watch my children, and that is a connection that they have to me. And tonight it's a little more than normal. My children have just recently been moved from one home to another, and their life is in a little bit of turmoil. And rather than not be here tonight, I put my device here so that if they had a question, they could ask me. And if that offends anybody, I'm truly sorry. My other option is to resign.
Thank you. David?
Mrs. Corcus, I would like to comment and say that I have never complained about the use of your device, and I think that the use of your device in the manner that you're using it is totally proper. I have my cell phone in my pocket right now on vibrate, and if it were to go off, I would probably have to answer it, because it would mean that there was something going wrong. And that's really not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to this. I'm speaking to laptops open and working. So I just wanted to be clear about that.
I didn't take it that you were, but I just wanted to explain to people.
I also want to be clear about the fact of interrupting people during public input is not part of our policy. And I will have to review the policy that you just read, but there has already been a case law that you have to delegate what can be said at public input evenly. And if you allow people to compliment, then you have to allow them to criticize. And this actually, and I'm drawing this from memory of about 2 years ago, it came up in a school board meeting about a teacher, and somebody was being critical of a teacher. And the decision was that you have to decide. If you're not going to allow discussion of your staff, you can do that. We can do that. We can restrict public input. But it only makes sense that if you are going to allow somebody to get up and say, you know, he or she is a great teacher, we have to allow them to get up and say, I am dissatisfied. And I think that's part of our public responsibility here, is that people can voice their opinions. And there was nothing personal nature that was going on. It was, what I remember, and you can watch the video, it was about the actions that were taken at this meeting. Personal to me is about things that happen in your personal life. And none of that was mentioned here. And I've never heard anybody mention anything personally about anybody. But if I disagree, or a person from the public disagrees about the actions of a person on this board, including myself, they have every right to state that. And they should not be interrupted by the chair.
Anything else on behavior of meetings? Okay, next item, superintendent's report.
Yes, I put that on there because I was under the, coming on the board, I thought we would be getting a superintendent's report, because in years past, the superintendent produced a report, and having been here now a couple of months, and I haven't seen it on the agenda, first I wanted to ask, is there a process that we have to get a report? And then if not, I'd like to discuss that process. So I guess the first thing is there a process?
If I could, I was on the board when changes were made to that. You know, the superintendent did in fact, in my time on the board, submit a written report. And it was decided at that time, at a time, I'm not sure when, that because of the interaction we had with the superintendent and the fact that he brings up items at the meeting, he's always at the meetings. Sometimes there are administrative reports that are submitted where people are not here to answer questions. The superintendent is always here at our meetings. And, you know, items that come up, he brings them up, we discuss them, and they're on the record. So there was a decision made that, you know what, don't bother putting it in the report. And that's how I remember it. If you if you don't mind, I might ask for a little clarification, if you could add it to that.
The other thing that came up was the majority of what I do is confidential. So a great deal of what I'm doing, I'm not going to from the report. For instance, I was at my desk this morning at 7 o'clock. Everything I did today is confidential. One of those things. It's personnel issues, it's kid issues. And then I would suggest to you that I don't believe there are superintendents that inform the board as much as I do in between meetings. Everything. And I would prefer not to wait until the end of the month to know those things. That's the history. I'll do whatever the board wants me to do. I can certainly take a couple of hours to write a report, or I can superintendent. Whichever you want, I will do.
Yeah, I think it is a good idea because there's a lot of what would probably be maybe trivial items to superintendent that are not going to really affect his, managing the school. That as a school board member, I would like to be informed of so that in dealing with the public, we could be aware of status of different things that are going on and these types of things. I would use Bo for an example. Their superintendent not only makes a report, he mails it to everyone that signs up on the email list. And they're not, certainly not confidential issues, but they're, we're getting a new video system and so forth. I'm not saying Phil hasn't shared those particular items with us, but I think it was also a good point because it was discussed in front of the public that showed up. It became a public document. People could look at it. They could see what's going on. I think the lack of information is never a good thing. So I would like to make a motion that we have the superintendent submit a monthly report on general items that are going on in the school district.
Discussion? Well, my discussion would be that just what I said. I think we get more than enough information from the superintendent, and I think he said it best. He could take 2 hours to write that report, where he's going to be talking about it at the meeting anyways, or he could superintend during those 2 hours. I think his time is better served. Not that everyone else's time is not better served, but again, other areas of administration are not always here, and they don't always have the opportunity to speak to those items. So those reports are nice for us to read, and they're very informative for us to read. So I would be against adding any more to the superintendent's current list of duties. Okay.
So I would add that there are probably a lot of things that, for instance, a question that I had, and it's not a huge question, but we no longer are going to have a language arts curriculum coordinator. I am interested in what is the plan to compensate for that. Now, that's not a board policy decision, that's management decision, but I'm curious about that. Obviously, we've been involved in the budget with that. And it, to me, doesn't warrant me bringing it up at a meeting. It's not that big of a deal. But some of the actions that we have taken, I'd like to see what ramifications they've had to Phil and to the management of the school. And like I said, they're not issues that I think need to be debated, but more curiosities. And I think it also is a good feedback for us because, we cut the budget. Well, what's happening? You know what I mean? How are things realigning because of that? Those are the things that I think if he had a few minutes to sit down and he could put them out. I don't want to put him on the spot right here, and when he hasn't had time to think about it. But those are things that I think would be beneficial to us as ones that make those kinds of decisions to see what the ramifications of those decisions are, as well as other things that things that are going on in the school district, so that we're more knowledgeable about what we're doing here. So that's all I have.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the motion to go ahead and superintendent to submit a monthly report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? You want to roll?
I think we're okay.
Got that? Okay, revisions to guidelines for public comment at Hooksett board meetings.
I'm the one that asked for that to be on the agenda. I would like us to look at policy for public participation at board meetings. It's policy BEDH. It was provided in the packet. And currently we have 4 guidelines, and I would like to start a discussion where we have it stated that members of the public are not, that this is not a forum for public complaints against school personnel. We could use this one verbatim. I just don't think that that's the reason that we have administrators here. We don't have them here for members of the public to come up and criticize. If you have a complaint with an administrator, you should bring it up with their boss, who is the superintendent.
I apologize, when you first started, Tricia, I was digging for my BEDH. Which part of this?
Number, in policy BEDH, it's number 4.
So you're looking to revise?
I'm looking to add number 4 into our guidelines for public comment.
Oh, I see, okay, all right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
But this is already our policy, right?
Yes,
You
but
just want to put it on
I just want to put it on the
agenda and
record
it
so
goes-
that everyone knows that's the expectation, that you do not come up and criticize school personnel who's here or someone who is not here. That there are avenues for personnel complaints, and the Hooksett School Board is not the place to do it. If anybody wants to discuss it, if you want me to make a motion,
That's what I was going to say, yeah. Is there any action you would like to take?
I would like to make a motion that we add to the guidelines for public comment at the Hooksett School Board meeting, number 4 on Hooksett School District Policy BEDH. I can provide the secretary with a copy. And it would be
I'll second.
It would be number 5 under our guidelines for public comment.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion? Okay.
I would just remind folks that it is people that come to this table, that come to this meeting, to pay the salaries of everyone in our school. And I think as long as it is done respectfully, there is nothing wrong with them in public bringing concerns to this board, as well as it is praise, which happens many times. So I think we want to limit the right for the public to speak. Again, we are just moving ourselves in the wrong direction. We should be dealing with their concerns, not trying to restrict them from voicing them. I will also say, you know, as I've served on the school board and talked about these devices and other things, I've talked to some kids about this, because we are to be examples for our children. And you have to be able to speak out. You have to be able to say things that are good and bad. And for us to try to push the public back and to restrict what they say does not serve the public at all. And again, I feel this board would turn in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Well, I'll add that, you know, this is already a policy of the Hooksett School District, and that we're merely adding it as a guideline for the meeting because it's come up as an issue. So we're not creating any new policy here. We're just highlighting it as part of our agenda. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of
Is the motion that we are going to write this into the public policy that we hand out on the back of the agenda?
And the motion was that it would be number 5 of the guidelines for public comment at Brookfield School Board meetings.
And I would ask, who's going to determine that? Is this going to be the chairperson is the one that has to determine whether these remarks are complimentary or not?
No, I don't think it's a matter of, if I'm understanding it, the board will not hear personal complaints of school personnel, not necessarily.
Right after number 4, it answers this question. The chairperson presiding has the authority to terminate the remarks. That's already our policy. This motion is just to put it onto this sheet, right?
I guess what I'm asking here is though, personal complaints. What is our definition of personal complaints?
I would say well, give me my device and I'll look up the word complaint, but I can't put a definition on it, but it's a.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If a person comes up here and says, I don't think a certain person is doing a good job in their role with our school, I would take that as a professional complaint against that person, because they're talking about their role that we hire them for. If someone came up and said, I think somebody's, and I don't even want to say it, not attractive or something like that, something to do with their person, then I would think that that's a personal statement. Is that the feeling of the board? Because I'm all behind not having personal statements.
Well, let me clarify my stance. I believe that if there are concerns with the school personnel, that they should be brought to through the proper channels, and that would be going through the administration. I think that's what this item is talking about. It's not for the board. It's not for the board to decide. It's a decision that's being handled by the administration. I would say if there's a personnel issue that is not being handled by the administration, then the public has the opportunity to come in and maybe go into once the board has an opportunity to review it, it potentially could be a non-public item. So that's the way I'm interpreting it.
But it says here, will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor complaints against any person connected with the school system. So you're saying that you couldn't say here in public that you don't like the way something's being done at a particular job or something like that?
I'm saying there are proper channels for it, and that's what this is saying, that we go through the proper channels.
But you're saying the board won't hear it?
Well, no, it says they could on school operations and programs. You just said on something being done. If it's about someone in particular person, that's what this is saying. You can't, right? So,
there's a lot of subjectivity in this, there could be any number of different scenarios.
Well, why don't we cut to the chase? If someone comes up here like they did at the last meeting and says, I don't like the administrators using their laptops. As a chair under this, and do you allow that or do you not? Because that's a school board meeting. They're complaining here about what's going on in the school board.
Exactly. It's a school board meeting, and I would say if the chair is sitting here texting while there's discussion going on, you know what? The public has a right to gripe. So I would say that would be an item that we would not be listening to.
That we would not be listening?
That's a personal complaint. I assume that they're directing it to someone, towards someone.
No,
If it's just a general statement, then I would say, if somebody were to come up and say, I don't think anyone sitting up in front should be using a personal device, then I would say that's absolutely acceptable. If it's directed to someone, then that's.
But what if there's only one person using the device?
You know what?
That's
We
why I
can
think
sit
it's
here
all
all night and
silly.
come up
Yeah,
with
that's why I think
scenarios.
it's very silly.
This is an existing policy that there's a motion on the floor to move to the guidelines. So,
Why don't we just go to the vote?
Tricia,
The reason that I brought this to everyone's attention was that may not have ever been clear to the public, because prior to my being on the school board, I never read the policy manual that was this thick of the Hooksett School Board. Like, I didn't know what you could come and say and not say, and that is very clearly in our policy that that's not okay. And I stopped the discussion and have received public comment on why I did it. I've explained why I did it. I don't feel that I'm stuck with the word, I'm sorry. That it's okay to speak to an administrator about the use of their device. That's their boss's job, Dr. Littlefield. That's not my job. I found that some of the discussion from the public to our technology director was personal. They were personally speaking to him about his demeanor and his attitude, and I did not find that appropriate. And that's when I ended the discussion, that this was not a public opportunity to ridicule a member of the Hooksett School Administration. And that's why I brought this, so that people knew in black and white that that is not where this is discussed. If you have a problem with, I'm not going to use the same person, Karen Lassard, you would not come to the Hooksett School Board meeting and ridicule Karen Lassard. You would email or call Dr. Littlefield. Not that anyone has any complaints, I just didn't want to use the same person as an example.
I think we're getting into the actual policy here and what parts of the policy, and if we want to change that policy, I think we should later. I think the motion is just, can we put part of our original policy that we already have in place onto this agenda sheet? I think if we want to, there may be problems with the policy, we can change later on or do something about that, but I think right now it's just, we're getting off track. It's just, do we want to put this part of our policy on this sheet?
it's discussion on the motion. So any further discussion?
Well, I'll make a motion later if necessary, but I would ask that we have this reviewed because the vague memory that I brought up of how to conduct public input, I don't think that we can do this unless we say that they're not going to comment on those people. I think we should have Gordon look at that, because my remembrance of the case that I heard was you can't say good without being able to say bad. You can say take them off the table and we're not going to talk about the administration at all, but you can't dice it up like that. I think we should get a legal opinion on that so that we're not, going the wrong way with this. And then if the board decides that they want to go whichever way, at least we're on firm ground. But I wasn't aware of this policy either, and frankly, I'm kind of surprised that it's there, of what my understanding of public input was. So I think we should have it looked into.
Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor of approving item 4, policy BEDH, to the guidelines for public comment at Hooksett School Board meetings, and have it be item 5 of those guidelines, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. I make a motion that we have that policy reviewed by our attorney to see if it is in fact legal.
Second.
Discussion?
I think any time that we come up with a policy, whether it's an old policy or a new policy, we should look at it. It's also a fairly old policy by looking at the date, and things may have changed. So I think we should review it so that we're on, that we're on firm ground.
I don't disagree that policies need to be reviewed when there are questions concerning them. But we have a policy committee, and I think we should start with the policy committee.
I can bring this policy to the policy committee to see what the status of its review is. I'm fairly new to the committee. I've only been to one meeting, but I can let Kathy Richards know any questions about its legality. Most of our policies are coordinated through the New Hampshire, not gonna School Board Association. I didn't want to quote the wrong group, and Kathy gets updates of which ones we have to update, and then in addition to the ones we're required to update by law, there is a schedule for what else we look at that isn't required by law at this time. But I can bring this to the committee.
Okay, when is the next meeting for that committee? Is it September or next year? Or do you have-
But she can clarify, and I can provide that.
But there aren't any meetings scheduled right now for that committee, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm going on record that I'm bringing a legal concern that I have about a current policy of the Hudson School Board. I think something like that, phone call, probably enough, email them the document, circle that one, I mean, I'm okay with that. But I would rather take action sooner than later because, and I don't know that I'm correct in this, but it's a concern that I have as a sitting board member. And I think we should just take a look and then we're fine, we're fine. I mean, I don't think it's a big issue. I'm not discussing right now changing the wording of the policy, but just to see if in fact it is. That is my motion, and so.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the motion to have policy BEDH reviewed by legal counsel, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay. Review of the manifest. Where is the manifest?
I'd like to move to accept the manifest for June 19th, 2012, in the amount of $2,134,314.62.
Discussion? All in favor of approving the manifest as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Budget adjustments? Karen?
There aren't any.
Thank you. Personnel?
Several nominations, and just so you know, before I do this, as a matter of practice, I'm going to let administrators go at board meetings after we do personnel, because their jobs are done, but I want them to approve personnel in case there are questions. I just want the board to know that, so that when I'm done, I go, take it out of here. So with that, I have several nominations for you. The first is, I had the pleasure of meeting a great young man who has done just a wonderful job with our music program, especially our dance program. So my first recommendation is that we appoint Brandon Buhani. And my motions are always going to be on teaching appointments. As a teacher in the Hooksett School District, even though we're letting you know what that specific assignment is, we're appointing him as a teacher. That's my first recommendation.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
Discussion? Mike? Any discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the nomination of Brandon Buhani to music teacher, band and jazz director, Holly Middle School / Hooksett School District? Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I also had the pleasure today of meeting Carolyn Baconba, who is currently, and I'm recommending her appointment as a teacher. She will be a special ed teacher at Memorial. I love it when there's growth from within the district, and Caroline has been a hero for us. Has gotten her master's degree in special education from University, and was really a joy to speak with today about this position. So this is another enthusiastic recommendation.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor? Oh, sorry.
One question. That was my question. It's because the salary is because she has her master's.
Yes, yes.
I just noticed the
That's the sub one.
as compared to the other.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
One's a bachelor's, one's a master's.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving Caroline McCumber to the as special education teacher Memorial School / Wexford School District, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
And then, there's also some sadness here. Devin Van Dersky served us well as special law director of student services for the last 3 years as an opportunity in another school district that she will be pursuing. And so I recommend that you accept her resignation, and that will be effective June 30th.
Make a motion to accept it.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the resignation of Devin Van Dersky, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
And I have one more, if I could, that came in after Kathy did this. I am recommending to the board to accept the resignation of Heather Sheehan as an ELL teacher at Memorial School.
Motion to accept, please.
ELL, yeah.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of approving the resignation of Heather Sheehan, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? If I could,
I just had one question about the comment Phil made before he started, and want to interrupt him. Phil, were you saying that you wanted administration here for personnel or
Yes.
up to?
No. After personnel, in case there was a question I could.
Okay, because, I mean, and we don't need to take this up now, but I just wanted to get your feel before I thought we should. So are you saying, or would you be in agreement if we move personnel up, that they could go home early?
Yes.
Then I'll ask that that be put on the next agenda.
Yes.
I think we should talk about.
And in general, in general, the board may want to look at the order of things on the agenda.
I just wasn't sure if you were saying up to personnel
No,
or for
I
personnel.
need them in case there's a specific question about the assignment or whatever.
All right, well, I'll ask for that to be on the agenda at the appropriate time. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Good night.
Safe trips home. If I could, but this is not an agenda item, so we'll need the approval of the board, but I would like to speak. Well, I have a few brief comments about the Manchester high school situation. That again, it's not, the agenda was approved before all of the, I'll say, recent voting occurred on the budget in Manchester, and I'd like to add that right now if we could.
Are you saying adding a general discussion item to the agenda?
Yeah.
I make a motion that we add the general discussion item on the situation in Manchester to our current agenda.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the addition of that discussion, the Manchester High School discussion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It'll be, yeah, item I. There's a general discussion of the
Oh, okay.
It's new business.
Yep.
No real detail I want to get into. I think at this point, you know, with the budget being finalized, at least at this point finalized, I think it's appropriate for us to set in motion discussions with the superintendent on you know, the fallout, if you will, of the budget and how it will impact high school students from Hooksett. And there is a meeting wizard out there for that, but I wanted it to be discussed in an open forum.
Yeah, I'm all for that. I was a little surprised. I thought, I didn't know he'd be ready to discuss things so quickly as the 2 dates that were put up there. I'm all for it, but I didn't know if we were pushing him, because that's a lot of, I would think, that's a lot of details that he's got to work through. If he's ready, I think we should.
Well, what, please.
And we actually asked him for dates, and those are the dates he left us.
We know the results of the wizard.
I had not seen them. I think that was a problem. Kathy had said she couldn't see some of the information, so she asked for an email, so I emailed her back my availability.
Maybe we can visit right now. It's only 2 dates.
There's two dates.
I can go and look.
I can do either one.
I'm available.
I was good for the Wednesday, not the Thursday.
So that's the 11th. So the 11th. You know anything
Pulling
else?
up what the dates are.
I was available for Thursday and Wednesday.
So we've got, okay.
But
Tricia, I'm sorry, where we?
I'm looking up
Oh, you're
what the
looking.
dates are for you.
the 11th or 12th.
It's the 11th to 12th.
But I would not be opposed to having it the 11th, and I could look at the minutes or video, especially since I'm employed by the Manchester School District. I don't really feel I have to be partaking too much of the discussion. I mean, I'm still here representing Hooksett, and I will represent Hooksett the best I can. I'm just saying, if I'm the only one that can make it, and that's the best date, that's fine.
Along those lines, slightly related, where are we on the candidates for the assessment committee? That was one of the things I thought we were going to get updated on.
June 30th. We have it out on the website. We get you to June 30th.
Yeah, we're getting, I guess what I'm asking is, should we be out there trying to get
Yes.
some more people?
Yes.
Are we
Yes.
too low?
I saw an email of somebody requesting to be on.
Yeah, I've seen one,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if I
I've seen
hadn't
one.
seen others.
Yeah,
so-
okay.
Only one.
Okay.
And I think the more you have to choose from, the wider the range.
One other item, I'd like to suggest that the board, difficult time of year, I know, but the board have the superintendent schedule a tour of Pinkerton at our earliest, everyone's earliest conveniences. We obviously have to coordinate that with, we've had some, how would you describe it, high level? Informal, high-level discussions, and I'd like to suggest that we get the ball rolling and take a tour. Well, we, did you have some dates?
They're pretty open. They're pretty open. I mean, they'll do what fits your schedule. And I would indicate that maybe late afternoon for people who are working. We want to see each other. If you give me some possible times that yours are really going to be available.
I'm not opposed to a tour, but I really would rather see some data, because I'm sure when we go there, it's going to look nice, and I'm not saying it's not valuable to go there, but I don't know particulars about population they have, or, I don't really have any information. I'd like to, I could research it myself, but, and I know we are trying to move it quickly, but this was going to be something that I was hoping the assessment committee would provide us as a group with some type of packet of information. So I wouldn't mind going, but I would kind of like to have some things in my head when I went and say, well, where is that science lab that we talked about, or, you know, some of the, just to be more informed before I go, because I'm sure it's gonna be a nice, I've been on the campus, it's a beautiful campus, but I would like to get some information.
And I think the idea is that there will be people there that we can ask questions of, and that was really the, I mean, obviously to view the campus, but also ask questions if we have questions.
I guess procedurally, I have to say that too, are we, conducting a school board meeting, if we have a forum, and we talk to those people about, post offerings, and we should think about that, because, we just went and looked, I mean,
I would think we're going for information, unless we want to do it,
I'm just saying, I think.
unless we want to send a subcommittee.
Well, I think it,
I'll ask for some guidance. You have a little, you're legal.
I don't believe it's an issue. We would post the fact that we're doing it. I don't anticipate, as much as I'm impressed with the campus, because we haven't seen it lately, with some of the additions that have taken place in the freshman community and so forth. As much as I'm impressed with that, I don't believe that the board will deliberate about anything. So I think we're fine. But it would be posted.
But you bring up a good point. I just, that, you know, we would not want to be in any kind of deliberation.
I'm not going to vote for it.
no, but I think technically we have to post it, because if I say to Dana, you know, I like this place, and Dana goes, oh, I don't know. I mean, in my book, we're deliberating at that point, because he and I may have to vote later about something that has to do with that. And I'm not trying to be a stickler here, but I think if we post it, and that way, if people want to come witness what we're doing, they can, to see that we're not deliberating or that hear what we're saying. I think we have to make that opportunity.
I think we'll be able to go.
Yeah, please.
And it's not a public meeting.
I would, however you want to structure it. I mean, however you as a board, send a subcommittee or whatever, I have a sense that Pinkerton would not be offering a public tour of their facility at this particular time. So the idea is that you as a board, as we're doing informal investigations, we're having I don't want to mislead anybody, that they're not going to be prepared to accept whatever. My initial contact when I negotiated the Auburn contract was we went with the subcommittee. But and the rest of the board didn't get to see it.
I would recommend that if we're going to have a quorum, we institute a meeting here and continue it, so the public will be here. I don't know if they can accommodate them, but I don't see how we can be at a quorum discussing school issues, not allow the public to be there, and not be in non-public. And it doesn't qualify for non-public, and it doesn't, so I think if we continue the meeting at that location, which we've done that, I think we'll have to look at, I've seen other boards go look at the kitchen or something, and you know, you leave from this room and you go somewhere else. Part of the reason I'm saying this is, I think we have to step very carefully here, because we have a contract with Manchester. We are exploring. But if Manchester wants to come and say sour grapes, or you guys are doing stuff you shouldn't be doing, we need to be able to say no. We are doing everything exactly by the book, right down to whether we had a meeting or whether we didn't, because I think we could be accused of trying to violate our contract, or, you know, do things we're not supposed to. And I don't think we are doing things we're not supposed to, but I think we need to make sure we cross every T when we do it. So I think maybe if we convene the meeting here, if there's not a quorum, there's only two, I guess it doesn't matter. But
What defines a non-meeting? We've had non-meetings. How does that work? I can hear that.
not meetings to confer with council.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a chance social meeting.
We can't afford to bring water.
No.
But in our school board rules, I think it has something about if we want to go in as a tour. I don't know where it is now, but I've read it. But like if we wanted to go into Manchester, we would go through the superintendent. We wouldn't invite the public to come with us to a tour of Manchester. And this is possible public school. I think at the head school, did public attend that? Or
That was a,
that was a public meeting,
yeah.
so they could have. But, you know, this, I think, is a tour, if anybody in to get information. I don't know. I don't think it's.
Well, the other thing I would offer,
It's not a
Mike-
public meeting if we don't do any deliberating. But I think we need to read the school board meeting, the policies, because I know I saw something in there about that. And we are allowed to do that sort of thing.
But it won't really matter what the policy says, because the
No.
law says,
The law.
so we could have a policy that said we could, but if the law says we can, and normally, I think if we're all going up to head school or something, nobody would care. If it was a legal meeting, I understand that, but in this situation, with the climate that's maybe developing, I think we've got to be sure that we are not doing something we shouldn't be doing.
By attending the tour of Pinkerton, we could be exploring our options for our notification to the Manchester School District that we would like to opt out on June 30th of 2016, and we would not be premature if we began to look at schools now.
I completely agree.
It's easy enough to, I mean, we're not scheduling it for this week, right? I mean, it's easy enough to look up the New Hampshire law, the administrative rules. There's only about 7 that apply to school board members. And again, I remember reading them, but I have to look again and see.
I think the only way we do it without having a meeting is that we actually, discuss any of the things we can see. Because
At that time.
anything other than that, with us in a called place, a quorum, then that's it. I mean, that's my understanding. There's not a lot of wiggle room there.
Well, I know most of us can agree not to speak during the thing, but
We can
not
ask-
all of us.
Well, if we had the meeting, then we could discuss things, because I think we'd want
Yeah,
to.
I don't-
Clarify, we can ask questions.
Right, we couldn't come in.
Right, to each other.
Exactly.
And I think it should be like that without public. But that's good.
I'm only bringing it up,
No, I
in one vote, so.
That's a valid point. Valid point. Can we investigate that?
Okay. Yes. But I'm not sure what I'm investigating. You want me to ask Gordon that we want to do a tour of Pinkerton?
Can we go as a board and have it not be a public meeting?
Yeah.
Not discuss anything and just.
Can we go as a board, not a public meeting? Is that sufficient? We'll post it if it needs to be posted.
Well, I think we can go as a public meeting. I think the only kink in the armor here, and I'm not faulting Pinkerton, but if they're not willing to accept members of the public, and we have members of the public that show up, we're in a pickle, because members of the public have the right to come to our public meeting.
I think we need to state that. I don't know.
But if we can't have a public meeting,
I don't know if we can.
That's where the twist is, I think.
Are we okay with?
I'd like, yeah, we should
investigating
look
that?
at it.
The problem that we have is they are not subject. So
Okay,
Yeah.
it's.
so we'll have, can you check on that?
And generally, I'm not spokesman for Pinkerton, they don't open what they do. So, my sole intent of trying to do this is I am working on like informal discussions, not the only ones I've spoken to. But they're informal discussions. So some of it needs to remain confidential because it does compromise our position.
But then we run the risk that, are you saying that we're gonna hear things there that are not public? Then we can't have a public meeting. I really am in favor of the assessment committee, I'll tell you.
Well,
I think it's cleaner.
and if I could, I'm not because they have no authority. The purpose, and it's just my idea, if it doesn't work and it's too complicated, we don't have to do it. My purpose is, it begins the process of negotiations. Saying we're committing to Pinkerton, it does begin a negotiations process. And you do not negotiate a relationship like that, a business relationship in public. So, however you're wrestling with it, I've been through it before, and it wasn't an issue with the other SAU school district. But it's up to you. It may be so complicated that you don't want to do the tour.
How do you post it? How did you post it?
I forget it. I think you said the Robbins School Board of the tour.
It wasn't a subcommittee? Like a subcommittee?
We went on several occasions. The first visit, well, we went on several occasions. And so,
Yeah, I can't see anything wrong with getting information, going there to get information, not to discuss or deliberate, get information as a board, and not just with Pinkerton. If the other schools want to invite us or tour, I mean, to go get information, I can't see any problem with it at all.
I guess my issue is that we all voted to do the assessment committee, and I thought that that's what their purpose would be, is to go out there and do the initial look over and gather all the information, kind of bring it back here, and us to kind of look at it. So, and all, that doesn't pose any of these problems, and that also would include member of the administration, the public, that cross-section that we asked for. I don't know. I mean, if we do this now, then do we send the assessment committee down to look at it after? I thought that was the process that we put forth, and I'd rather wait and do that. And the other thing is, I don't think it stops Phil from having confidential talks with those people. I mean, on his own. I mean, does us walking through the building make a difference?
It was my understanding the assessment committee was to assess our current high school system.
No, it says to look at all the high schools that our students were listed for, that were available, basically, was the criteria. So,
Okay. But students attend.
and Manchester and Central were
Yeah.
included, yes.
Okay, all right, yep. Tricia?
It is my understanding that, in our contract, if we notify Manchester that they are in a material breach of our contract, and the Department of Education says they are in a material breach, they have 180 days to correct it, and depending on when we notify them, in the fall of 2013, we could be high school homeless. So I don't think that it is not prudent for us to go look at another school, nor do we jeopardize. The assessment committee is assessing what's going on where we go. The school board is being asked, we made a motion and it was approved unanimously for Dr. Littlefield to have informal discussions with other schools, and he is coming back and saying they are offering you a tour. If we don't accept, they're not going to take us seriously if we become high school homeless in the fall of 2013.
I want to be careful. We don't start negotiating against ourselves. Public forum, not that this is secret information, but I don't want to be broadcasting to people who currently have a contract what alternatives we're looking at, just as a business. It's too early in the process. My memory serves me, when the board was considering the assessment committee, I believe that I contacted the board and said, the sooner you can get that in place, the better. because as I'm doing my informal talks, the data they collect will be very important to all of us. So I probably need a little clarification, and maybe we all do, on what the role of the assessment committee is. I see them gathering data, and I think we listed it. It was accreditation data, school approval data, and so forth. I was never under the impression that they would have any status to be visiting alternatives to our current situation and having any kind of dialogue with them. That's really a board thing. I would be very careful about delegating that. Otherwise, we're sort of working at cross purposes. I don't want to go into a lot of detail because I don't think we should at this particular point in time. But I have contacted everybody that was on that list. I had various forms of feedback from each one. That right now it needs to remain confidential. And at some point in time, I need a mechanism where I can bring that to the board.
Well, I think we may be talking about two things, because I thought the assessment committee was, so we would gather data so that if something were to develop, we would have a better understanding. We also have the reassignment issue and knowing which schools that we're likely, or now the superintendent is likely to assign other students to and what they have to offer. I didn't see this as just a effort to go out and necessarily, start negotiations or anything like that. I thought it was to gather information and bring it back to us. So I don't see any problem with Dr. Littlefield talking to everybody. But at the same time, I think, at this point, should we rethink this assessment committee? I mean, if we're not, I hate to encourage people to come on it if we're going to step up and do the work and go out and there's really nothing left for them to do. I don't think that makes sense.
I look at it as we directed the superintendent to have these informal discussions, and we received an invitation. I don't think we're taking anything away from the assessment committee. I'm all for the assessment committee because they're going to have a lot of work to do. It's not just going to be a tour for them. It's going to be a part of it, absolutely. But this just allows us, the way I look at it anyways, I'm listening to information from the assessment committee, and I've seen this facility and can visualize it.
I'm not comfortable going on the tour with a quorum unless we make it a public meeting and the public can come along. I don't want to put myself in that position, and I don't think there's likely anything to happen, but I think this is a very tense situation. I don't want to stretch it. I mean, if the assessment committee went down there and looked around, there's nothing wrong. They could go anywhere they're invited. But for us to do it as a board, I think there's some issues. I'm personally, unless it's absolutely by the book, I don't want to be one of the members that goes. As much as I'm looking forward to the tour, or maybe we break the tour up into multiple tours or different times or something, but I don't want to risk the quorum question. Thank you.
I think we just form a subcommittee, and this way we have, we respond to their invitation, and so they know we're serious, and that negates any situations with it being a public meeting.
Two persons. Three meeting.
Wait, when is our next meeting? We have a meeting scheduled?
August, the next scheduled meeting, unless we have.
Is it July 11th?
Yeah, I think you said you're available on the 11th,
I'm available for the 11th.
and you agreed that you were okay with this. So yeah, it's the 11th.
Dr. Brennan, it's July 11th.
Are we going to
So-
make that a regular meeting?
Well,
Or
it's
just
a
meeting?
posted meeting. I think we'll have the standard business items, but it'll be a shortened agenda,
So right now, it's single item.
single item.
So couldn't we get the assessment committee in place that night? If we had closed it on the 30th, we could appoint and approve on the 11th, and then have them go and tour the facility. And then we're off the hook. Because I'm just a little concerned as being one that brought the assessment committee forward and now trying to encourage people to join, that if the very first action that's going to be taking place, the school board's going to step in, form a subcommittee and go. And to me, it just makes it seem as though they're really, the first task has been run for them.
How was the invitation?
Well, I've been having informal. We all get feedback from the public, including me. In fact, I do it every day. I talk to parents. And what I'm hearing as a theme is some great concern that the long-standing and positive relationship this community has had with Manchester is in jeopardy because of funding issues. And that the public is concerned not about September of 2012, but what does it look like in 2012? And then what else do they lose in 2013? And then what else do they lose in 2014? The majority of questions that I get are not from parents who have kids at Colley and they're worrying about where they're going to go. They're from parents who have kids at Underhill. And I thought that the board shared that same concern that I had about the long term and wanted me to informally start talking to other people about, would you be interested in Hookston? Could you take some of our kids? Could you take all of our kids? That kind of discussion is a confidential discussion. And I have been collecting information, so one of the places I go to was Pinkerton, not the only place. And before I have any further conversation, I thought it might be a good idea for those people who are not familiar with the campus, school board members, to see it. Now, I know, once again, since we've been through a major change in order, that certainly passed community muster. Both the parent community and the community at large. That it's a process and not an event. And the initial investigation was myself and Pinkerton, expanded to subcommittee and Pinkerton, expanded to full board and Pinkerton, expanded to a series of community presentations by Pinkerton to the general public, as well as the parent public, about what they had to offer and so forth, followed by a school board forum, community forum, and then followed by the decision to actually make that change, so that people had information and people had data. There's really no use in my having informal discussions with anybody if I'm not going to do anything with it. My understanding, and again, I say this to you all the time, my job is to implement the policies and decisions that you as a board come up with. I might be confused on this. I didn't see the committee that's been formed as having that role. I saw that as a data collection committee, so that we'd have a set of data. You know, I saw their final part, like the high school study committee. You know, they had a charge, they did it, they finished, and they reported to the board. They didn't make a decision on whether we're going to build a high school, but they gave you numbers. I thought when the group was done, that you as a board and myself as contacting those informal districts would have a column like that would be SAT scores, accreditation, school approval, longitudinal data on college acceptances, who finishes college, so that you'd have like a matrix to compare hard data from one district to another. I thought that was the challenge. I certainly don't want to be doing cross purposes. Like, I'm doing one thing, but you have an expectation that this group is going to do something else. But I think you just need, as a board, as 5 people, to clarify what we're expecting of both, and I'll behave accordingly. But I don't want to be contacting people and asking those questions about, are you interested in us, what we take, and so forth. And be sort of like wasting their time.
It was my interpretation when I was involved in both votes, was that we were directing the superintendent to have informal discussions with other people to see who could take some, all, none, and that the assessment committee was assessing where our current students went and what their structure was. It wasn't my understanding that the assessment committee was going to visit initially all of these places. It might, with an initial report, we might determine what we'd like to look a little more at that, but that would come back and be a board decision, that they would go and look at other schools. When the original high school study committee was set up and we were collecting data, when we thought, well, we might need to go look at some of these schools, we came back to the school board and said, as this study committee, can we go and look at some of these schools we're looking at? We didn't just go contact a school board. And maybe other board members can speak to when they voted, how they voted, what their interpretation was, and that might give us clarification.
Well, I just want to know if we could just put this on the agenda for the 11th meeting, because I know that I can address some of the concerns. Well, I won't be there, but I can address them ahead of time. Some of the concerns about the legality of this. I think we should get as much information as possible. I think the informal talks by the superintendent, our visitation, the assessment committee data, I think all of those should be used and as much as possible, and from all the districts. And so I just think if I can show the legality of it, I'm sure, if we have more time.
What I'm having a hard time getting my hands around here is that 6 months ago, this board was publicly making statements that we were in danger of violating our contract with Manchester if we didn't put hardship in JCB. All of these concerns, they were in the paper every week. Now, tonight, again, we turned down a more unrestricted JCB that would allow this board to send people where we wanted to. But on the other hand, we're going to go to a school and talk to them about taking our kids when we're in a contract with Manchester, and nobody seems to be concerned about the contract. I'm all for it. I'm all for doing this. But what I don't understand is, when we were acting within the letter of our contract, members of this board publicly said that we were, in fact, going to violate that contract, and we better do nothing. That's why I thought an assessment committee made up of a cross-section of people to start looking at this stuff, and if Phil wanted to have informal conversations. One of the other problems we have is that Phil's confidential information can't really be shared with us. Because my understanding is we can't go into a non-public meeting to talk about these things, because I don't see where they fit up with one of the criteria to be in non-public.
Negotiations.
But it's not negotiations. I don't think we'd want to say that it's negotiations at this point. So I'm all for the tour, but I just don't think, I'm having a hard time understanding some of the people on this board when we're so worried about violating the contract one moment, 6 months ago, and today, when I bring up being careful, it's like, nah, it's not a problem.
If we have an opt-out date, which we do,
June 30th, 2016.
we have every right to prepare for it. Now, if we prepared 3.5 years in advance, 4 years in advance, nobody can call that any kind of a breach. We're not breaching anything. We're preparing for a time when we have an option, and that's all we were. Actually, Joel,
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
My intention is that we're preparing for whether we want to opt out at our opt-out date. And I think the sooner we start that process, the better, so that we're not faced with the same situation we had an opt-out date before. And to my knowledge, nobody ever started investigating whether we really wanted to leave or not.
I'm in total agreement. What I don't understand is statements from this board about violating the contract when we were executing our contract, the vote tonight to restrict our ability to send some kids to other schools. It seems inconsistent to me that now we're going to go down there as a formed board and discuss with officials from another school our options of breaking our contract with Manchester. And
we're going down and ask questions.
no, and Dan, you were the one that when I was arguing with you about the fact that we were not violating our contract under JCB prior to hardship, you were the one saying, "Oh, we've got to fix this. We're violating our contract." That wasn't true. And now we're willing to go and have a school board meeting down there. It's inconsistent.
We're not talking apples and apples.
We never are, Dana. We never are. Thank you.
Tricia?
I had my hand up.
You did.
So if 4 of us would like to attend a meeting that has been extended to us by another school, and Mr. Pearl feels that he's conflicted personally with the decision to do or not do, he can opt out of, like, we can say, yes, we'd like to go, and can Kathy set up a meeting wizard? We think afternoons would work best in everyone's other work schedules. And if Mr. Pearl feels conflicted by it, isn't sure of the legality of it, we can say explore the date while Dr. Littlefield looks into Gordon, what we call it, how we post it, what we say to it, and Brad does his, but we are at least going back to this invitation and say, we're working out a date when would work good for you, like on their part. I mean, is summer, maybe Pinkerton leaves at 1 o'clock. Like, I don't know. Like, on Fridays, administrators aren't in the school all the time. So maybe Friday will never work at Pinkerton during the summer. Like,
But it's not just Mr. Pearl. I don't want to do anything illegal or against the administrative rules either. I'm just saying I'm sure I can show those rules if we just wait on this. I'm sure I could show that it's legal. I just have to research that, or however we got to do it so that it is legal. Whether it's a subcommittee, whether it's counted as non-deliberative, or whatever. I know I can show that if we just wait a little bit and bring this up at the next meeting.
Go had something you wanted to say?
No, I wanted to apologize for asking you to go on a tour.
And that's all it was. It was an offer, so.
I need to assure the board, as a board, that I am keenly aware of what the Manchester contract says. I think of nights that I dream about it. I know pretty much how to do my job. I'm not perfect. And as I'm approaching other districts, I know what the conversation is, and I can assure you with 100% certainty that engaging in dialogue about what your options are for June 30th, 2016 is not a violation of the contract. Engaging in dialogue, I've been such a good boy today. Engaging in dialogue about what you're going to do if, in fact, the budget crisis is so severe that they're in breach of contract, is something you gotta start talking about. And you talk about that by calling, by going into non-public and talking about it. And I can assure you, you can talk about it. You're not required in public session a video that we can send to Manchester to say, here are the strategies that the Hooks board is going to use to hold you accountable for the contract. That is, I'm concerned. That's a dialogue you have to have. I don't want to get into, for instances, of hypotheticals because it creates something else. But I'm losing sleep over your high school students. And I will follow your lead and do whatever the will of the board is. But we gotta get going. Because you don't have many options. And I know that because I've had informal conversations with a number of school districts. You don't have any options.
Yeah, Phil, I'd like to take exception with your statement that you know the contract inside and out. We've had this discussion before. But on November 4th at the school board meeting, you made a statement that the high school contract with Manchester required hardship. And I asked you to change that statement, and you would not change that statement. So to sit here and say that, and bring that up as a point that you know that, I still ask you, why have we misrepresented to the public that the high school contract with Manchester requires hardship? This board could be sending students now to other high schools for the actions of this board. That's very clear. So I think we formed an assessment committee. We did that with a plan, and I think we should follow that plan. Or we might as well get rid of the assessment committee.
Could I make a recommendation that we continue moving on the agenda that we have, and then when we get to non-public session, if our superintendent thinks we have contractual things to discuss, that we go into non-public? Or do we need a motion that we accept the invitation to Pinkerton? I'm asking the chair for clarification.
Some information on that.
But I'm asking the
We can take action if you like. This could just be a discussion.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this invitation until our July 11th meeting.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of approving the motion as presented, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So we've got the July 11th meeting with Dr. Brennan. And we'll see what we get for information. All right.
I don't understand how we can, at the July 11th meeting, have Dr. Brennan here, have him leave, and then we're going to discuss having an invitation to Pinkerton. We've changed meetings around so that prospective employees don't come when he's going to be here. I don't understand.
If we're not doing anything wrong, and that's what Phil said, then there's no problem if Dr. Brennan's in the room and we discuss our tour to Pinkerton. If it's a public meeting, it's either confidential or it's not.
There's professional courtesy to the man. Dr. Brennan has a job to do. He's not in favor of many of the things that are happening. He's controlled by the Manchester Board of Mayor and Aldermen. I mean, that's a classic problem in Manchester that has been going on for 25 years. The superintendent's hands are tied behind his back, depending on who the mayor is.
My assumption is that the superintendent will give his report, will ask questions, he'll answer as best he can, and then he'll be on his way, and we'll proceed with the meeting.
And I think he'd think worse of us if we're not preparing for the future of 2016 or whenever we opt out, if we ever decide to opt out of Manchester. I mean, he would expect us, I would think, to prepare for the future, and that might even help. Maybe he can offer some kind of advice or things about Manchester for us. I mean, I don't see what the competition will hurt for at the end of the contract.
And Mike stated he's pretty confident he can provide us with some information. So, that's why I voted for favor. Okay. Opportunity for the public to address the board.
Good evening, Mark Nevo, 42 Main Street, spoke with CNS, Just a couple of things I've been listening to tonight, and I thought I'd address them before, and I'll try not to be personal. I always try not to be personal, I know some people take that, and I can't help that. But we're all being either elected here, or we paid your salaries. And so I think I'll try, if anything, to be rhetorical. There's nothing in the public inputs regulations of being rhetorical. I would ask of the chairman first. There was a lot of votes here tonight that I didn't know what the final vote was, and short of the roll calls, I would ask the chairman to follow Robert's rules by just calling the vote 3 to 2 approve, or 2 to 3 not approve, or whatever the vote is. I think we're sitting out here and we see nods or mumbles, and so that's just not a criticism, but an observation. I would also agree at this point with Dr. Littlefield at this point too, that I think some of these negotiations with Pinkerton would also be confidential, and I don't see a problem with the quorum as being an issue. Speaking of Riggins rules though, as we were talking about behavior tonight, I'm wondering if this board follows Riggins rules. It's a parliamentary procedure of behavior. And I think you guys should look that up and perhaps adopt at least some of those, list of rules over the 20 years. Pick the ones you think are appropriate, but I think this board would be better served and less of a disservice to the public should you adopt some of those rules. I'm dismayed often as to finding reasons why things get done on this board. And I think Dr. Littlefield just kind of alluded to that, where he sits here and he sees some boards decisions not being made, postponed, kicking the can down the road, wish them past the radio, and those rhetorical comments. seems to me if somebody has a complaint about the public and they have a problem with what they're saying, if they're acting accordingly, it's not personal. It's actions being done, being commented on the actual board members or the administration. Again, it's not personal, it's the actions being taken that are being critical of. The public has the opportunity, long term, if they're not happy with these school board members, they have an opportunity to vote their own. That is our final say in the matter. I often see, when it comes to public input as well, or statements being made, it's often, in my view anyway, in my opinion, engaged in semantics. I'm used to hearing semantics in town, I'm well aware of them. Accountability, transparency, these are all words that you've tried to use in the past. Legitimacy and collaboration. You got to vote in January of the school board to try to be more collaborative with the public and other boards. And tonight, we disputed that night. I'm wondering, there are certain board members here, I'm not naming names, but what we see here in the public is that it seems like no matter what person comes up as a vote, there's always criticism of those agenda items, and there's a resistance to do so, whether it's a good idea or not. So I'm wondering myself, is what are the other members of the school board initiating before this board? Don't see a lot of that from the other members. They just criticize those who do. I did have another question about, there was a radio show earlier this week. Gerard's, I forget his first name, Jerry Gerard's radio show with Dr. Brennan. And Dr. Brennan had mentioned that the BYOD on his radio show, the BYOD in the Hooksett School District was to start in September. That's prior to this vote tonight. I'm wondering how that happened. I'm wondering how he got the impression that BYOD is already being initiated at the beginning of next school year. That happened in this radio station at the beginning of this week. How would Mr. Brennan know that? That disturbs me greatly. I've been reading his book lately, just almost finished. Now this school board, the school district, promotes Apple computers in the Apple computer format. It thinks highly of Steve Jobs. I'm reading this fascinating book. It's called What Would Steve Jobs Do? Think different. I urge the school board to think different. There are quotes here in this book. Good leaders realize what they don't do well and develop strong right-hand man relationships with others to get things done. I think Steve Jobs said in 2006, I think if you do something and it turns out to be pretty good, then you should do something else wonderful. Don't dwell on it for too long. Just figure it out what's next and move on. He's also well known for his 6 steps of leadership. I urge you to read this book, but the 6 steps of leadership are in adopt them. Time.
Any other public comment? Okay, informational items and correspondence. Items for the next agenda.
Yes, I'd like to put on the agenda the development of BYOD policy. Since we have voted tonight to institute a BYOD policy, I think it's the obligation of this board to come up with that policy because as it stands right now, I don't think the board has a BYOD policy. I'd also like to put on the moving up of the personnel, or looking at the order of the agenda to possibly move personnel up, since we're seeing that may be an advantage to our administrators.
Now, when we say next agenda, are you talking about July 11th, or are you talking about August?
Well, let me be clear, I'm asking for July 11th, because I think it's a business meeting, and I'm thinking that we should, if this board has now taken action on BYOD, I think we need to formulate a policy before we ask the school to institute and enforce it.
Those two things are on July 11th.
Yeah, and you can include what we have existing for policies. right now, the agenda is, we've got Dr. Bowman coming in. We're going to be discussing the offer of a tour from Pinkerton. These two items. Tricia?
Could we also look at going back to our second board meeting being more thematic in nature, as they were, Cheryl and I first came to the board, where ALPS came, technology came, different great things going on that those were presented to us. And maybe talk about what the board is interested in seeing.
When you talk about that, when you talk about the agenda, because there should be two different agendas. I think sometimes they all mixed up together, so that would be something.
So that'll be part of that agenda?
No, agenda is on the agenda, and I think you can talk about, you have 2 meetings a month, if you want to differentiate the agendas. That's what you've done in the past, but never formally set a format for the agenda. And you know what, before I want to make sure we're very clear on keeping back to the Pinkerton thing. It's not an invitation from Pinkerton for us. They're not engaging us. It's a result of the informal talks that I'm having with a lot of school districts. And I've asked if my board can see the campus. So I want to make that very clear. Just want to be sure.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Mike?
I had a question on the agenda at the end. It says the next meeting is Tuesday, August 2nd. Is that a Thursday, or is it Tuesday the 31st? Because the second is a Thursday, I think, so. Isn't it? Or am I looking?
No.
That's my date.
I'm looking.
That's my date is wrong, I don't know.
It's actually-
Tuesday is the 31st?
No, I mean,
No?
the
The meeting's on the 7th.
Oh, 7th.
It looks like-
I thought it said 2nd, I'm sorry.
It does say second here.
Does say so.
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the
I don't have
list
my
of
glasses.
meetings, and it says the 7th
Oh,
on the list of
okay.
meetings.
Okay, so it should be the 7th on a Tuesday, right?
But we have a meeting the second.
2nd is out.
I
Okay.
have the 7th in my calendar too.
Thank you.
Okay, so those are the items we have so far for that July 11th meeting. Informational items, in your packet, we have the meeting dates for 12/13, membership updates, policy of school board member ethics, school board code of conduct and procedures, board superintendent relationship, board employee communications, rules of order and public participation in board meetings. I'd also like to, I received 2 requests, one from the Hooksett Support Professionals and one from the Hooksett Education Association to begin bargaining a master contract for 2013. I know that's in the works, but I wanted to
Peter Phillips is, because a lot of you are on negotiating teams. Peter Phillips is our attorney that handles negotiations. And you'll probably get an email from him with some dates. And initially what we try and do is the first meeting that we have, we attempt to set ground rules, which are pretty standard, and set negotiation dates. So that first meeting we have is always the toughest, and then after that we'll have dates that we're all move on. So that's in the works right now.
Do we have a 1-year contract that ends July of 2012 right now? Or does the contract end, the current contract
Yes.
end July of 2012?
13.
13.
Oh, 13.
Yes.
Okay.
13.
Oh, yeah, not July 2012.
No.
Obviously
no,
13.
Yeah.
12, 13.
Yes.
You've been negotiating for 13.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
Okay, non-public?
Motion to adjourn?
Did everybody sign the manifest?
No.
No, I need to.
Second motion.
Okay. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned at 10:05. Hey, hold on.
Yeah.